very expensive.
All right. We're joined to help honor Rick Hendrick, his wife Linda Hendrick, and 7-time NASCAR Premier Series champion Jimmy Johnson in here. Just a reminder, Mr. H holds the all-time record for both NASCAR Premier Series championships with 12 and NASCAR National Series championships with 15. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions. Thanks for being here, everyone. If you would, please raise your hand. We have a couple mics and state your name and affiliation. Let's start here with Ben.
Ben White with the Lexington Dispatch newspaper. Just an easy question to start off. You talked about having 5 employees in 1984. Is that where the number 5 came from on the car?
No. Harry Hyde was emphatic about having a single-digit number, and 5 was the only one I think available at the time. So 5 was he just wanted a single-digit number, and man, it's hard to believe when you go up on the hill and you look at that little tin building and you think about the fact that I actually was renting transmissions, rear ends, equipment, everything from him, and Randy Dorton was next door, and we did the engines, but it was the most low-buck deal that you could imagine, because I thought it was going to be bigger the way it started, and it didn't work out. But to think that you could win 3 races that year, just unbelievable. In today's world, I mean, you take millions and millions to get started, but we ran Chrysler rear ends and Chrysler transmissions for a year before we ever got enough money to go to the what everybody else was racing. But
Let's go here to Mark and then to Bob.
Mark Garrow, PRN. This is for Linda. For years, I lived in Raleigh for 14 or 15 years, and I had to drive every day past this little gas station. And for years, I wondered why there's the Hendrick, tag on the nicest Lexus, or, I mean, really primo cars parked there all the time. They're switched out all the time. And I always wondered about that. Finally ran into our mutual friend up there in Raleigh, and he told me a little bit about the station at the bottom of the hill. Can you talk about that experience? I guess you guys worked on cars together there too a little bit, and just can you talk about that little station that was mentioned in the Hall of Fame acceptance speech?
Well, Rick and I met at that station because I was taking a friend of ours into Raleigh to meet her fiance, which was Rick's best friend at the time. And that's why I first was introduced to him by her. He was there working on his Corvette, and it was Gene Henson's service station, a friend of his, and he allowed him to come over and work on it. So, that's where I met him. And yes, I did help him work on cars, but that was in his yard, where we lived. At home, we worked on cars after work and carburetors, or sanding fiberglass, or adjusting headlights, or whatever we had to do. I did mostly detailing on the cars, but I didn't do it at the service station, but he did a lot of work at that service station.
Let's go to Bob and then Wolfgang.
Bob Hawkers, ESPN. Rick, you talk about how you idolize this sport and idolized a lot of the people who've been inducted into the Hall of Fame. What is it about the sport that made you idolize it?
Well, I grew up not far from South Boston, up on Carr Lake, and we would go to, my dad was working with Frank Edwards, had a modified car, Ray Hendrick had a Jack Tant, and I was go with those guys to the race. My dad was involved in the 98, and Clayton Mitchell was I'd go to the shop when I was 8 years old, and that was, so Fridays and Saturday nights, Friday nights in Richmond, Saturday nights South Boston, and if you really got to do something really special, you got to go to a NASCAR race. And the first one I remember was Hillsboro, and it was dirt. And it was, I think Junior Johnson came in with a car and primer, And I remember Buck Baker and Buddy Baker had a grudge race with Richard Petty and Lee Petty. And I think Baker's had to borrow Tiny Lund's car. And I remember that, and that was a long, long time ago. I have no idea what year it was, but I remember it was a dirt race in Hillsborough. And but that, to me, Fridays and Saturday nights with my dad going to Trenton, modified racings. But the big race was, I remember I wanted to do something special for my mom and dad, and I sent them to Daytona. That was in, bless you, about 75. And no, it was kind of like, you know, in my growing up, as a gearhead, you saw the picture of me working on a car and automotive mechanics. That's all I really cared about. I was ADD off the chart. Loved working on the race cars, being around the cars, and it was just, and NASCAR was the epitome of racing.
Let's go Wolfgang, and then right behind him to Kenny.
Wolfgang Monser from Germany, Rennsport Press Agency. Congratulations for the Hall of Fame induction.
Thank you.
And in your speech, you said you started with drag boat racing. Why did you choose drag boat racing as a motorsport discipline? Why not going directly into car racing? And my second question is, now you build your own engines in NASCAR. Did you do the same in drag boat racing as well?
Okay, I think when my dad was involved in the modifieds, there was a guy by the name of Eddie Royster that drove the late model. My mother thought that was too dangerous, so I run boats, which was more dangerous. And I lived on a lake, so, and then I just got into drag boats, and then we won the national championship, I think 2 or 3 years in a row, held the world record for the fastest propeller-driven boat. And then I drove a boat, my brother drove one, and Jimmy Wright out of Richmond, Virginia drove one. And he was killed in the boat in Litchfield, Illinois. And I could not, we tried to go back and do it again, and it just couldn't do it. And we stored the boats at Harry Hyde's shop, and that's how I met Harry. And so it was, if my mother had let me, I would have probably been in a late model car. I probably wasn't good enough, but I would have done it. And but I drag raced that 31 Chevrolet and won a lot of races when I was 15, and built motors in high school. Built my own motors out of scrap parts from the modified cars. So, and you know, I've kind of been in it all my life, and what people don't realize is it was the racing that got me in the automobile business, not the automobile business that got me in racing.
Let's go to Kenny, and then we'll come over here to Mike, please.
Kenny Bruce with NASCAR.com. Rick, everybody seemed to be able to keep their emotions pretty much in check up there tonight. You mentioned talking to all different kinds of people and looking back at different things throughout this week. Was it a case where by the time you get here and get through all this, you're just emotionally drained?
It really was. This has been, and Linda will tell you, it's been the toughest week without losing a family member I've ever, I mean, just raw emotions up and down. And we had a little champagne toast before I went in there. And the two doctors, the doctor that invented the medicine that saved my life was in there. And I lost it. I mean, Jeff Gordon said, I've never seen you that emotional since I've known you. And my friends and family were in there, and I got to be with them, so I got a little bit of out of me before I got on the stage. But when Linda came out, and that was, you know, I think you get so busy in life, you're looking at today and what you're going to do tomorrow and plan for how you're going to race this year, how you're going to, I've got rollouts with the automotive group next week, and I'm knee-deep in numbers and trying to get ready. But this week, I ratcheted back and I started looking at old pictures of my dad, my mom, us when we first got married, and thinking about Max Mulliman and thinking about Harry Hyde and all those stories, and Tim Richmond, and just all those memories. That I didn't do anything else this week but just go back and reflect on the past. And it was just like, I couldn't help it. I've never been that way, but and I'm kind of glad that I got to take a minute and we shared stories about, remember when I left to go to school, she was sanding a boat in the yard, and a drag boat, and we laughed about adding up our money in the back of the Winn-Dixie to make sure we could pay when we got out, and those kind of things you just forget about, and then you think about the ones we lost, and my son, when Jimmy just, it was the sweetest thing ever when he dedicated the race and was talking to Ricky, and we are like a big family, and even though it's a lot of us, we care about each other, and I don't care if people think that's corny. That's the way I was raised. It's worked for me, and it's worked in our companies, both of them. And when Winston told me when I walked in here, he said, there's one thing I can tell you about the fabric of both of your companies, your people love you. And I said, you know what? You telling me that means as much to me as being in the Hall of Fame, because I feel like job well done, because you look after your people, they look after you. And, maybe I'm just getting to the age I'm getting where I reflect back. And Richard Petty and I had he's always given me some of the best one-liners that I've ever had. When he lost Adam and we lost Ricky, he told me, he said, we were walking through the garage one day, and he said, it wasn't our plan, but it was God's plan. And so I meant what I said tonight about all the people in the sport. There's some great folks. Richard Childress and I called each other. We were talking today. Joe Gibbs called me before he was going to be out of town. Roger Penske called me. I mean, when I was sitting in Daytona, not Daytona, but Homestead, with Roger Penske and Joe Gibbs, we were racing each other. And we were paying each other compliments. I mean, you wouldn't see that in the NFL. I mean, we want to beat each other just as bad as anybody, but it's really strange. It's a different deal. I don't know what it is, but it's pretty special.
Awesome. Let's Mike and then David Scott, please.
Mike Hembry, USA Today. Rick, the first win at Martinsville, you get the purse and pick up a sponsor. If you had not won that race or won sometime during that period, were you actually close to having to pull back?
Yeah, we had made that decision. I was counting on a sponsor with Richard and in the deal we were talking about. So with All-Star Racing on the car and going to Daytona, and man, looking down pit road thinking you don't need to be here, and I couldn't afford it. I mean, I could not afford to finish the year. And if you close the doors, you probably don't come back. And Jeff Bodine knew that. I had told him and Harry I'd go as far as I could. And we wrecked a couple of times. We wrecked Darlington pretty hard. And I said, but Harry said, Bodine's so good at Martinsville. Let's go. If we can go to Martinsville, I think we can run well. And thank goodness I listened to Harry, and Jeff won the race, because we picked up Northwestern Security Life, and that got us through the end of the year. And then as soon as we won that race, we got Levi Garrett about halfway through, and we won 2 more races, and then it just fell into place. But it was done. No way we would have come back.
Let's go to David Scott.
David Scott from the Charlotte Observer. Jimmy, we know the story about Jeff Gordon telling you when you were just coming in that Rick was interested in you. What was that like for you, and how soon did you get with him, and what was your first meetings kind of getting into the sport with Rick like?
Yeah, the opportunity that I had to talk with Jeff in 2000 at the, I guess the fall Michigan race it was. I was looking for advice, and I felt like Jeff really knew the answer. He was in a position earlier in his career where he had to leave Ford, and a lot of the people that believed in him and got him going, and he left and went with Chevrolet and with Rick. And my situation was similar. The opportunities that I had meant leaving Chevrolet and doing something different. So I was, one, shocked that Jeff accepted, Jeff was willing to talk with me and spend some time with me that afternoon before the race. Two, I was shocked that he even knew who I was, that Mr. Hendrick knew who I was, and that they were considering starting a fourth team, and that was the driver that they were talking about. So mine was blown for sure. I had been around Rick and Linda a little bit prior to that. I'd been around Ricky Hendrick a ton. We were great friends, and I had no idea that behind the scenes, Ricky was one of my biggest supporters and cheerleaders with Jeff, with Rick, with Linda, and really helped kind of get some air under my wings within the company and people paying attention to me and looking at me as an option.
All right, everyone, congratulations, Mr. H. But before we let you go, we also wanted to present you with a couple more honors for the evening, as if you haven't had enough, right? Not long after the 2017 NASCAR Hall of Fame class was announced last year, the accomplishments of each of this year's inductees were recognized in Congress by United States Representative Richard Hudson of North Carolina's 8th Congressional District. Mr. Hudson's remarks honoring each of the inductees from the 2017 class were recorded in the Congressional Record, the official record of all congressional proceedings, and copies of those remarks were framed. Also, the Mecklenburg County Board of Supervisors, by unanimous vote, voted today as Rick Hendrick Day in Mecklenburg County. We have both of those proclamations with us here today, and we hope to get a photo with you before we let you go.
Absolutely. And thank you, folks, for voting for me. I appreciate the support getting in the hall. So thank you for voting for me, if you did.
I think most people in here did. I don't think you have to worry about that. Congratulations.
Thank you. We really appreciate you. You've been awful good to us. And this guy right here, Linda will remember this. Ricky talked me into letting him ride home with us one night.
Yeah.
And his alternator went out early in the race.
Before the start of the race.
Yeah. And so I spent 3.5 hours in St. Louis waiting for you, and bought you hamburgers coming home.
Yes. So
but
they were
paid
nice
me
enough to
back.
give me Ricky mentioned I could ride home on the plane with them, and the hood's up on the car on pit lane before the race even starts, basically. And I just assume my ride's gone and I can ride home with my team, and I climb out of the race car and Ricky's standing there. He's like, "We've got to go. My parents are at the plane. We've been waiting for you." I'm like, "What? Really?" So I was scared to death, then of course went, and Rick served me a cheeseburger with a smile, and we flew home. So thank you.
Thank you for all the championships.
That's great. We're going to shoot right from here with this in the background. You both are welcome to flank if you want.
Come on, baby.
Come on, Jimmy. We'll have two different ones. All right. Next one, Mike. Rick Hendrick. That's cool.
Down a little bit. There we go. We're good?
Thank you very much. They told us this morning at like 7 o'clock. He's got an hour left.
Congratulations. Awesome job. Awesome job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Have a great evening for the rest of it. Get some rest too.
Thank you.
It was awesome. Congratulations. Awesome.
Amazing. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff.
Thank you. Congrats. Hey, bud. How's it going? Nice to see you. Congratulations. Great job on your speech. It was awesome.
Well, thank you. Just kind of, well, I get comfortable when I get on.
Once you get the flow going. Yeah. I don't know if we're both building the wall.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, I couldn't.
Do you want me to get Connie?
Yeah, she's supposed to be here. Yes, Austin's going and get her.
Just, while we wait.
No,
Oh, wow.
you're what?
That was mine.
No kidding. That's a hell of a deal.
Wow.
Where does that thing score?
174.
Oh, yeah, shit.
That's in Iowa?
Yeah, they have some big ones up there. Show it to Austin.
I will. I showed it to him on the field. All right, we found Judy. We're good. We found her.
No, I wasn't lost.
That's all right. You can take your time. You have plenty of time. All right, everyone. We're joined now by the family of Richard Childress. Joining him is his wife, Judy, and as well as Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series drivers and his grandsons, Austin and Ty Dillon. A reminder on a couple of Richard's career accomplishments. He won 6 Premier Series championships with inaugural NASCAR Hall of Famer Dale Earnhardt, and was the first owner to win a championship in all 3 national series. That was highlighted this evening. With that, let's go ahead and turn it over for questions. If you would, please raise your hand. We'll get you the wireless mics. Let's go ahead and start over here with Wolfgang, and then we'll go to Mark.
Wolfgang Monser from Germany, Ranchford Press Agency. First of all, Richard, congratulations from the induction. You mentioned, and it was mentioned also before, you had so much success in NASCAR, especially with Dale Earnhardt. Did you ever play with the idea, after having so much success in NASCAR, to move or to look into other motorsport discipline, to start something else?
Yes, Wolfgang, we've considered it, and we ran ARCA. Ty won a championship for us, but I think you're thinking about IndyCar or Formula One or something like that. Yeah. You know, I'm not too old not to do it yet, so we may try it. Thank you.
Let's go to Mark. We have a mic. Sorry, I might have said Mike, and we'd go Mark. Sorry, my fault. Mark, and then we'll go back to Mike. How's that?
There you go. Mark Arrow, PRN. This is for Judy. I just talked a moment ago with Linda Hendrick about some of the early memories and literally helping Rick work his way through this process. And can you talk about some of the early memories? We heard about, you know, you're in the truck sleeping with the baby, he's sleeping underneath. Can you talk about some of the other things like that you remember?
Well, I know that we traveled quite a bit, and but we had a lot of fun. It was a new experience for me, and the first experience with a dirt track was real exciting. I wore all white. And I didn't know we were going to a dirt track. I didn't know much about racing other than he just loved it, you know. So we had quite a few experiences. We went to Charlotte, North Carolina, and it was so hot. It was about 100 degrees. And so we got a hotel room, a motel room, and Tina and I went to the hotel and slept. And then Richard came in, and he said, "We've got to go hunt a windshield. I can't get in because my windshield is broke." And we were out hunting a windshield for his car so he could drive the next day. So we've had quite a few experiences. We went across country, and we just had great experience through our life. We didn't know any better. We just went and had a wonderful time.
Let's go,
We
Mike.
got to rent a car and took the windshield out of it.
Where'd you finish?
End of the story.
Into the story. Didn't you put the cracked one back in the rental car? Didn't you swap them?
No, I just took it back.
How'd you run that day? Did you do all right?
Yeah.
Good.
Did you take it back without the windshield?
No, we put it back in.
Let's go, Mike, and then we'll hit Ben right next to you.
Mike Hembry, USA Today. RC, I was a little bit surprised that James Hilton wasn't somehow involved in your induction tonight. But you raced with that group of guys for so long. Could you see a point coming that you were going to take it up to this next level with what happened in the 80s and Dale coming along and so on? Or could you just have raced until you ran out of money driving?
You know, I wasn't ready to retire. I think I was in my 34, 5, somewhere in my 30s. But I could see all the new money coming. We seen the Warner Hodgdons, J.D. Stacy, MC Anderson. All the money started coming into the sport, and I could run in the top 10 and have some pretty decent runs. And but I kept falling back every time a new owner would come in there, and I just wasn't quite having the fun I was having. And I just decided it was going to be the time if an opportunity came along to get out of the car, and that opportunity came with Dale Earnhardt in 1981.
Let's go to Ben, and then we'll go over here to Bob Pockris.
Richard, Ben White, Lexington Dispatch. Basically, real quick, 2 questions. One, you talked about buying that first piece of land or that first shop because of Talladega. Where was that shop? Was it in Winston-Salem or in Davidson County somewhere? And secondly, how hard was it for you to get out of the race car in 1981 and turn it over to Dale? Because that had to be a really tough decision.
Yeah, that shop was on Highway 109. It was 4,000 square feet in Davidson County. And then, yeah, it was, you know, it was hard, but I knew that if I didn't get out of the car, that it was going to get tougher and tougher seeing all the new money coming in. And the opportunity was there with Dale. We put that deal together in Anniston, Alabama. Oxford, Alabama, I guess it was back in the day in that area.
Let's go over here to Bob Pockris.
Bob Pockris,
Hey, Bob.
ESPN. Hey, Richard. You talked about, you know, a kid who sold popcorn and peanuts at Bowman Gray. Why'd you do that? Was there something about Bowman Gray that just attracted you, or did you need what I guess would be maybe the 5 cents per popcorn or whatever the price was on it that day?
Yeah, you got a penny for every bag of popcorn and 2 cents for peanuts. I mean, peanuts was a penny and popcorn was 2 because the big box you couldn't carry as much. But no, I went over there. My stepdad carried myself and my brother over there when we was kids, probably 6, 7, 8 years old, probably 7, 8 years old. And we watched a race. And so we asked him if we could go back. And he said, well, I can't take you over there. I don't know if he was working or what. I said, can we walk? And it was 4 or 5 miles. So we'd walk over there to the stadium and try to hang out with the drivers and then follow somebody in or jump the fence or whatever we had to do to get in to get a job. And you might make $1, 75 cents or $1 at night. And that was good money back in those days. So I fell in love with racing. You couldn't sell nothing when you were when the race was going on, so I'd sit down and watch it, and I watched my heroes, Billy Myers and Bobby Myers and Curtis Turner, Glenn Wood. These were my heroes, not Johnny Unitas and not all the big football players and people of that era. And I knew then that that's what I wanted to be, was a race driver someday.
Let's go back to Mark.
Mark Carroll, PRN. This is for Austin and Ty. Maybe Richard can jump in on this as well. Been over the race shop before, and Richard's talked about, okay, I've got the grandpa hat and I got the owner hat. And I was over there one day and said, today it's the owner hat. I'm not happy about the restarts over the weekend or whatever. And again, for both Ty and Austin, and if Richard wants to join in here, can you talk about how he goes back and forth between those 2 hats, and if maybe that gets blurred, you know, sometimes?
You want to take this one, or you want to start it? Yeah, maybe it was your restarts. Oh, yeah. So I'm usually the restart guy. But no, you know, the greatest thing is he always encourages us. And I think Mark Martin said it tonight. Our family has always gave us what we needed to do our job, and then also the encouragement of always telling us that we could accomplish what we wanted to do. But as far as the owner side of it, you know, he is a man of his word, and he's always been that, and I think he's proven that with instances throughout his career that if he says something, he's going to do it, and you expect that as one of his drivers, and I'm his grandson, and I expect it more than probably most of the drivers because he's going to be hard on my brother and I, and more than anything, we want to accomplish a lot for him, and you know, the one championship that I got for RCR, it means a lot for me. My two, actually, excuse me, Truck Series and Xfinity Series, and the one I'm missing is the third one, and I'm going to do whatever I can to bring him that third championship, and I hope he stays on my butt. That's what I need, and I need his leadership and his drive to take us to that next level.
Yeah, I think his motivation comes from many different ways, and I think growing up around him and knowing the kind of person he is, like Austin said, he's a man of his word. That makes me want to be a man of my word. It motivates me to want to go out and say what I want to do and accomplish that goal, just like he's done his whole career. That's what he wanted to do, is drive race cars and be in this sport. And look, today he's in the Hall of Fame. And then also, you know, he motivates us by telling us to get up on the wheel and puts the owner cap on and says, you boys got to go make it happen. So yeah, you got to see a little bit of both of the ways that he motivates us. By being a great grandfather and a great owner.
He always does say, hey, we got to have some fun. But I don't know if he really takes it in when he says it, because he's walking by when he says it, but he always wants us to have fun. So that's pretty special to have a guy that we want you to do well, but he wants you to have fun doing it.
Let's go over here to Reed.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire Service. Richard, as hard as it was for you to get out of the car in 1981, how hard was it for you to tell Dale that he should go elsewhere until you were ready to win races? And were you ever afraid that you might not get him back?
You know, that's a great question. You know, I never will forget, we wasn't really ready to run Dale Earnhardt, but the opportunity was there. And we was at the old Sheraton in Darlington, Florence, South Carolina, where we all used to stay. And we sat in the car that evening, got us a six-pack, and we sat in the car and talked about it. And I just told Dale, I said, Dale, we're not ready, you know, I'm not ready to race you. You need to go somewhere and race for somebody else. He gave me his choices. The 28, they wanted to hire him over there with Stacy had just bought it also. He had two good opportunities. I can't remember the other one. And the other one was Bud Moore. And I said, Dale, I'm still looking at myself as a driver. I said, you ought to go drive for Bud Moore because he's a racer and he'll help you all the way. And that's how that happened. And we were in a hunting club in South Carolina. And we'd get in the bunk beds at night. He'd always make me get on the top. And we'd be there and he would, we'd lay in there with the lights out and talk about racing and what we wanted to accomplish. And we knew we wanted to get back together. And there's a lot of things that someday I may write a book and tell. Really, you'd be surprised how all of these things, the people that was tangled in that web.
We've been trying to get him to write a book for a while, so every time y'all see him, please start pressuring him to write the book. We want to know all the stories, too.
Help you
There's
write
some
it,
good
too,
stories.
Yeah.
Some I can't tell. No, it wasn't. She got on to me. She did get on to me last night. What, I said something in the media or something? Oh, I know what I said. I was wrong. I think I told her, I said something in one of the media about hanging out with them guys, watching them over there. Okay.
Well, before we get Richard into any more trouble, maybe we better let you go. But before we do that, we actually have a couple more honors for you here. The accomplishments of each of this year's inductees were recently recognized in Congress by United States Representative Richard Hudson of North Carolina's 8th Congressional District. Mr. Hudson's remarks honoring each of the inductees from the 2017 class were recorded in the congressional record, the official record of all congressional proceedings. And we have copies of those remarks for you here tonight. Also, Alan Joines from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, has declared today, and congratulations, you have 1 hour and 8 minutes left of this, honor today is Richard Childress Day in your hometown of Winston-Salem. So congratulations on both of those, and we'll get a couple photos of you with your family before we let you go.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, come on over here. We'll get some photos facing this way. we'll let Judy and the boys flank you here, too.
Okay, got to have him in here.
That's right.
Awesome. Awesome.
Nani. Yep, Nani and Papa. Oh, shoot.
Get in here, boys. We'll get a shot here, Richard. Okay. Yeah, one more. Heads up, Yanni. He's the official. All right, we have one more. Stand by. Let us know if you need us to tip it or anything.
Old Richard Childress Day.
You got an hour of it so far. You might get a free Coke or something.
I can't even get locked up there.
All right.
How you doing, sir? Thank you very much.
You're not doing well. Your father was a friend. He was a friend to everybody, so I know everyone says that. But I worked with him when I was at Nextel for quite a while.
Oh, wow, okay.
Used to call him all the time. Yep. Please. Come on here. I'm happy to help. Here. Just go ahead and grab your seat.
Sit down.
We'll ask you guys to just share the mic. All right, we're going to double up here. It's getting late, and we certainly want to allow people to get home. So we're going to have a double honor here of help us celebrate the inductions of both Benny Parsons and Raymond Parks. And here for representing Benny are his widow, Terry Parsons, and sons Keith and Kevin. A reminder on Benny, 1973 Premier Series champion, and certainly one of the most beloved figures in NASCAR history. Not only for being a driver, but also for being one of our colleagues for a long time. And then Raymond Parks, here representing and helping us honor him, granddaughter Patricia DePotti and widow Violet Parks. A reminder on Raymond won the first 2 championships in NASCAR, the Modified Championship in 1948 and the Premier Series Championship in 1949. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions. We can start here with Mark Garrow. Let's get a mic to him. Sorry, Matt. It's coming at you. There we go.
Mark Garrow, PRN. This is to start with the Parsons clan. Terry, we've talked about this before. You know, Benny had a little list that he wanted you to take care of if he passed away after battling the cancer. And one of those was, please don't let him forget me. Right? And that's sort of driven you to keep promoting him for the Hall of Fame all these years. Can the three of you talk about now he won't be forgotten? He's kind of etched in the wall forever.
Well, I mean, as far as my list, there's still one thing on that list that isn't complete, but this was the big one, that I thought he had only said that to me, was, Terry, don't let him forget me. I found out since then from different crew chiefs that he had from years ago that he said the same thing to them while he was battling cancer. So we all knew that this was what he wanted. We didn't know how we were going to make it happen, but we knew we didn't want people to forget him. And then when the Hall of Fame, he knew he was on the original list for the Hall of Fame. Winston Kelly had called and told him that. And he was so deeply honored that he was even make a consideration list at that point in time. But then when he got in to the Hall of Fame and it was announced that day here that he had made it, one of the crew chiefs, and I don't remember which one it was, and I want to say it was Waddell Wilson actually, that mentioned to me, he said, well, there it is. And I said, what? And he said, don't let people forget me. They can't now, he's in the Hall of Fame. And so I really didn't put the two together until somebody else said, well, there it is. And it happened that way. And I'm sure the next question is going to be, what's the other one that I didn't get done? Everybody needs to call Bruton Smith. He wanted me to get the North Wilkesboro Speedway reopened, and so you know how that's going right now. But anyway, we're still working on that.
Wow, that's a big one. He didn't leave you with an easy task there, of
Bruton's
course.
softening up a little bit.
Can Keith and Kevin just talk about maybe their favorite memory of Benny at the track?
Keith, Kevin, please.
At the track, probably when he started driving the 55 car, they were gracious enough to let Keith and I be involved. Up until then, we had been there and sitting in the stands or in the infield in the car with our mother. But and we drove for Mr. Jackson and Johnny Hayes. They were nice enough. Keith and I ran gas. When they put the gas in the car, so we felt more involved. And then I started sticking my head in the window and just listening to conversations. And it was, back then it was more family-like, I think, than it is now. I don't go now, so I wouldn't know. But it was much, the drivers all talked to each other in the garage. But that was just really good times.
I think mine would be tonight, but maybe not for the reason you think. We were fortunate enough to have, I guess everybody gets to bring people, and we had his crew chief when he won his 2 ARCA championships was here, a man named Ralph Young. Travis Carter, who was his crew chief when he won the championship and the Daytona 500, was here. David Ift, who was his crew chief in 1979 and 80, was here. Leo Jackson, that Kevin mentioned, that was his owner, was here. Andy Petrie, that worked on those cars for years, was here. I mean, that group of people has never been together that close in my lifetime that I can remember, and it was just neat to see those guys and to just know that they are such a big part of this and they enjoyed it. You asked Terry about Terry's thing about not let nobody forget him. I mean, you guys probably know Tex Powell, who's been in the sport for a long time, and I'll try to be brief, but he tracked down the car that my dad won the championship in that had been sold multiple times about 7 or 8 years ago, and dedicated his life to restoring that car. He didn't do it for any money. I mean, he paid for it out of his pocket or got help from people. I mean, he just did it for our dad. I mean, so I knew that he would never be forgotten with people like Tex Powell and Mike Powell and Richie and Les Bars out there that rebuilt that car. I mean, that means everything that those guys did that for him.
And that car he's talking about is the car that is here in the Hall of Fame. And the end of that story is that as they put that car together, there was only one piece missing, and it was the gas cap. And back then it was blue, and the car was orange. And Les made one of the crew guys that helped put the car back together made the comment, "Too bad we don't have the original gas cap." And Tex Powell said, "Wait a minute," and he went out to his brand-new Cadillac Escalade, got the gas cap off of the truck, and brought it back inside and said, "I've had this on every car I've ever owned since 1973.
Wow. Great story. Let's go to Wolfgang and then over here to Mike.
A question to Violet Parks, Wolfgang Monser from Germany, Rennsport Press Agency. We heard today as well, especially from Rick Hendrick, that everything is sponsorship driven and money, and without a sponsor you cannot race, not in NASCAR, not in any kind of other championship. How was the time back in 1948 when Raymond had a team? How was it financed? Did you have sponsorship already to that time?
How was Raymond's car financed in the time that he ran in the late 40s?
I have no idea because I didn't know it then.
She didn't know him then.
I would imagine he financed it
on his
himself.
own.
Yeah, he financed it himself.
Yeah. Let's go over here to Mike.
Mike Hembry, USA Today. Patricia, your grandfather sort of left racing all of a sudden after doing so well. Did he talk much to you over the years about that, and did he talk about really missing it and wanting to get back?
He always carried NASCAR with him.
Go ahead and grab that mic there, sorry.
He always carried NASCAR with him. He did tell me one time, we were in a car and we were talking about racing, and I asked him why he left. And his exact words were, well, it was expensive. And he said, I had a family to take care of. As most of you know, he left home at 14, and he had 15 brothers and sisters. And throughout their lifetime, he always wanted to make sure his family was taken care of and that he was there for them. But when he left, like I said, he didn't leave it. He physically left. But if you went into his office in the store, he had everything he loved right there. He had his trophies, He had his pictures. He had his family surrounding him in the stores. And he had his business.
In that office, did he work there until he...
He worked in the stores until he was in his late 80s. He would go 2 or 3 times a day into the store for as long as I can remember. He was very hardworking, had very strong work ethic. He was a very honest man. He wanted everyone to be honest with him, but he was also very much a gentleman and very humble.
Very neat. Let's go to Lee and then back to Hunter.
Lee, SpencerMotorsport.com. I have a question for both families. And Terry, I know you've met a lot of drivers, and they have a tendency to be a bit insecure. And, well, I mean, I'm just being honest, but for Benny to ask people not to forget him when he was such bigger than life and so unforgettable, why do you think he thought that way, that people would forget him when he was such, just such an incredible, beloved individual?
He didn't know he was bigger than life. He didn't know that he was as famous as people tell me now. He didn't see himself in that way. To him, he was still the same guy that was born and raised in Wilkes County, that lived in Detroit, that drove a cab, that he saw himself with the common person, not somebody that got someplace to be famous. And I think that's why, really in reality, I think that's why he connected so well with the people that were listening to him on television commentate races, because that came across in everything that he said. I mean, he didn't talk above their heads. He talked so that people understood what he was talking about whenever he was explaining how a car worked or what was wrong with a car. And I really, he didn't know that he was as big as a deal as he really turned out to be.
And for the Parks family to hear people talk about Raymond's contribution and that NASCAR might not have evolved to the sport it is today without his presence, without his contribution, can you touch on that and, what the people, how the people describe that tonight?
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that exactly.
I see it almost as a partnership between Bill France and Raymond. Bill France created the idea, started it, brought everybody into the Streamline Motel. But I think my granddad loved the sport and what he was doing and the cars and the racing, that to contribute financially was to help build that part of the dream. And I honestly do not believe he ever imagined it would get to where it is today. I don't know if that answers what you're asking, but.
I think it did just fine.
Okay, good.
Great job. Let's go back there to Hunter.
My name is Hunter Thomas with thefourthturn.com. This one's for you, Kevin. Your father, whenever fans watched him on TV, they felt like they could relate to him. Can you talk about his ability to communicate with whoever it is in the garage or in the grandstands, and also how he made racing fun for everybody?
Well, he was a big race fan. He got that from his father. There was not a bigger race fan than our grandfather. And he took him to his first race at Wilkesboro. So he just loved, as Keith said earlier, loved everybody in racing. And that came across. I was talking to Ned Jarrett earlier tonight, and when the two of them and Bob Jenkins worked on their team together, that, I'm biased, but that was, I think, the pinnacle, because they all got along, and it was like they were sitting in their living room. So I think just his regular speak, for lack of a better phrase, came through to the fans. He didn't use $10 words.
Well, listen, we certainly appreciate you all being here this evening, and before we let you go, we have a couple more honors. For both of you, Each of this year's inductees were recognized in Congress by the United States Representative Richard Hudson of North Carolina's 8th Congressional District. Mr. Hudson's remarks honoring each of the inductees from the 2017 class were recorded in the congressional record, the official record of all congressional proceedings, and copies of the remarks are framed with us here tonight. Also, for the Parsons family, Mayor Robert Johnson of North Wilkesboro has declared today Benny Parsons Day in Benny's hometown, so congratulations on that honor. And then also, for the Parks family, the Dawson County Board of Commissioners proclaimed today Raymond Parks Day in his hometown of Dawson County. So congratulations on both those honors. We'll get a photo before you head off stage. Thank you for being here this evening. Let's do the Parks first. We'll just take a picture here before that. We'll take a couple of the Parks. Okay. And then we'll do this. Just bear with one moment.
Go right ahead.
Right here, we'll take a picture before we come out. There you go. Let me bring him right back there. There you go.
I grew up in newspaper, Winston Sound, and reading a story of my life.
Keith Parsons. Keith Parsons.
An AV story was up there.
Good. Really?
Blair in this room. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it.
Right.
I don't
Couldn't
know.
be better.
I'll be around.
It's good to see you guys. I
All
miss,
right.
miss my family.
We're rounding out the evening, finally. But we couldn't round it out with anyone better than Mark Martin. Mark, congratulations. Great job with your speech tonight. A reminder for those of you in attendance, Mark, 40 career wins in the NASCAR Premier Series and 96 wins across all 3 NASCAR National Series. Won 49 times in what is today's NASCAR Xfinity Series, which was a record that stood for 14 years. Mark, tell us real quick, if you would, about this evening, what it means to you, and I know you're probably tired of talking about it, but one more time, recap it for us.
Oh, I feel like I've had a cup of coffee or I've been playing some Gucci Mane. I'm wide open. I'm wide open.
Good.
So
with the Gucci Man. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions. If you have a question, raise your hand. We'll start with Wolfgang, and then come over here to Mark.
Mark, congratulations.
Thank you.
You'd said in your speech, if I understood it correctly, and I apologize for my bad language, that Jack Roush gave you the second chance when you were looking through the fence. When you retired, and I think you were 20 years with Jack?
I raced for Jack, I think either 18 or 19.
Yeah.
It was either 18 or 19 that I raced for Jack.
When you finally retired, didn't you come to your mind the idea maybe open your own team or start a co-owner team with Jack, become a co-owner of this team?
I owned my own team in 1981 when I did the 5 races and did so spectacularly, and had owned my own team for several years. And so I went full-time NASCAR racing in the next year in '82, and I went broke, and I finished the year. The Hutchison-Pagan, that was the parts supplier, and Goodyear were very good people and let me race on credit. And I was in the hole bad by the end of the season, and had to sell everything I owned to pay them off. So I had nothing. So to answer your question, no, it never crossed my mind, and never will.
Never will?
No, I would not own a race team unless you gave me the money.
Again, through happy circumstances, a big sponsor will approach you.
I just don't, I'm not up for it. Number one, financially, it's a terrible business model financially. Number two, I did my deal for 40 years, and I'm all the way in or all the way out. And I can't, to win, the rest of my life would be sucked up like the past 40 years, and I can't do it. I don't want to lose my next 40.
Let's go here to Mark, then over here to Bob.
Mark Garrow, PRN. Mark, during your speech, you talked about, your parents, your dad in particular, and I was wondering if you could retell the story. I'm remembering it from way back when, about your first experiences with your dad teaching you how to drive on some of those old dirt roads.
Well, the speech was incredibly limited. It needed to be very boring in 20 or 30 minutes. So I didn't get to, I didn't get to elaborate on anything. But my dad was my hero. He taught me, how to live, how to survive, doing dangerous things at a very early age. And he, there's a lot of stories. There needs to be a book and a movie about my dad because he was a phenomenal guy that did stuff that, that no one could ever believe. People think you're telling stories when you tell the things that he did. But yeah, I was, the story is, and it's hokey, but the story is that we lived out the dirt roads out around Concord, Arkansas. We would get out in the old car, and I would stand in his lap and steer the car, and we went fast, and I was pretty young, and those roads had one-lane wooden bridges. They were short because they were just over creeks, but the road would narrow down to the one-lane wooden bridge and widen back out. And I remember starting to cry as we're barreling toward the bridge and telling him I can't do it. And he said, "Then we'll wreck." Wow. So I think that's the story you were after. That is the truth.
Wow. Let's go here, Bob, then over here to Mike.
Bob Pockris, ESPN. After kind of going broke and getting fired as a Cup guy, you go back to ASA. Why keep racing? What was it about racing that said, okay, I'm going to still try to do this instead of maybe just hanging up the suit?
Because racing was my passion. And because racing was my passion, the easy thing to do was to go to the trucking company that my dad owned and go to work there. I had no interest in that trucking company. The only thing I knew was racing. So yeah, it was really, really difficult. And I found an owner that was willing to build two ASA cars, and Ron Neal from Prototype was willing to put motors in them again. But the days of free cars were over. That's what Ray had told me at that time. So that's how far down I was. So we didn't have we didn't have much to go on, but I was very grateful for the opportunity to start back, build those two cars, and get one ASA win that year, and win some other short track races, and get my feet under me. And then the following year, I got with Jerry Gunderman and Jimmy Finney. And though we didn't win the championship, we won some races, bunch of races, and did really well. And then the next year we we won the championship, and Jimmy got offers to drive, or Bobby Allison was after Jimmy to come crew chief his Cup car. And I got this offer to go full-time Busch Grand National racing. And Jimmy's like, I'm not going if you're staying. And, I wasn't, I didn't want that. I wanted Jimmy to go chase his dream and career. And I thought that the Busch Grand National move was a lateral, but a little bit step up opportunity. I still didn't have plans to come back to Cup racing when I took that job. But we won, by May, we won our first race. So the phone started ringing from Cup guys, and obviously, I would entertain, but my heart was not set on coming back to Cup racing. It was set on establishing a solid career that I had a family, that I had to support, and I needed a solid career, and that's what I was doing. Jack Roush came along, and there the second chance was.
Let's go over here to Mike, then Kenny.
Mike Hembry, USA Today. Mark, you've talked a lot of times about how driven you always were. It seemed like a lot of times when you would win races, your emotions were more relief than joy in a lot of ways, because you're already thinking about Monday and what we're going to do next. Was that essentially always the case for you through your last years in racing, or did you get to a point where you could really sort of relax with a win and enjoy it?
I think I enjoyed the wins in '09 much more because, I had put all that behind me. But through the ASA races, I was a little bit that way, but not terribly. But when I started racing the Cup races, as we went forward and we missed that championship, first of all, very disappointing in '89. We were actually second in the points going into the last race and blew up and finished third. That still pisses me off. I know it's not a championship, but I'd rather have been second than third. And then missing the championship the next year in '90. Every year we went forward from that, the pressure grew to get it done. I mean, I thought it would happen, but still the pressure was there. And there was so much pressure that I put on myself, that I think it just sort of snowballed. And I got worse and worse and worse. And, I just let it suck all the joy out of it. And I really regret that. And so when I stepped away in '06, I never planned to run a full schedule again. I never planned to race for points ever again. I got over it and passed it all. And the short schedules in '07 and '08 were fantastic for me. I had no intention of driving for Rick Hendrick. I told him no twice because I wouldn't run a full schedule. And then, he's a car salesman, don't you? The car salesmen are pretty good, and that dude is pretty successful. And so I got to thinking about if I could just win one more time. And you know what happened. It was magical. And I never cared all year long about the championship. I mean, it did not faze me. Even though we led the points, coming out of New Hampshire for the next week or two, and had a great shot at winning it. I would not ever let that suck the joy out of my life again, ever. And so I was pretty happy. And we had the time of our lives in '09.
All right, we have time for a couple more. Let's go Kenny and then end it up here with Jerry.
Kenny Bruce with NASCAR.com. Mark, you spent so many years thinking about nothing but racing. What does Mark Martin think about these days?
How shiny can I get my motor home? I got to get that trash and take it out. That light bulb's burned out. Damn it. You know, I know I'm not an electrician, but that damn outlet don't work, and I'm going to fix it because it's too much trouble to get a real electrician out here. So hopefully I don't get my hair curled doing this. And, you know, I just do all the things that I used to pay people to do. I still go like hell every day. You know, that's the same on me, but yeah, I just really enjoy not, you know, not having that laser focus. You know, I'm still focused. Don't get me wrong, and I'm still OCD, and I still run wide open. I just, you know, and I'm still odd about how I want things and all that. You know, I'm still that same guy, but you know, life is just a lot more serene for me now.
I wanted to ask you, was it, even though you sort of eased out, even though you did come back and run the full schedule for Rick, but you know, you'd already scaled back before that. Initially, was it a difficult transition for you when you weren't going to the track any at all?
No, it wasn't. I never missed it and have never missed driving the race car. For the whole entire 3 years, I've never once missed driving the race car. I've missed the people. I missed you guys. I've missed the garage, and I've missed the fans, but especially the garage and you guys, because, you know, y'all were family for so long. But I liked racing from the very start because I was good at it. I'm talking about when I was 15 years old. I didn't like racing because I liked driving, and I never I never gave a flip about driving a car fast. You know, I hated testing. Hated it. You know, I didn't drive race cars for the joy of going fast, man. It was to see that scoreboard, that car at the top of the scoreboard. And that's one thing that is really strange, because that's the one thing about it that I know I'll never experience that feeling again. But when I stepped out of that car after every practice and saw that number at the top of the scoreboard, or, you know, after qualifying, or if I was really lucky after a race sometime, that I can't describe to you what that meant to me. And I'm done giving what it takes to do that, so I care zero about going and driving a race car, or testing a race car, or driving a car fast. You know, come drive this Ferrari at the test track. Why? You know, that's not what I do anymore. You know, I'm really competitive, and I was pretty dang good at what I was, but what I did for a long time. But with me, if I ain't gonna do it right, I ain't gonna do it, and I can't do it right anymore. You know, I did everything I could to extend my career as long as I could, and when I was done, I was done, and I haven't missed it, and I'm so blessed, because I know people that do. But that doesn't mean that, you know, it didn't take me time to figure out my passion. And you ask me what my passion is, and I give you no really good answer. But my passion is I get up and go like hell every day, and that's it. And I'm excited and happy about every day, you know, and the opportunities I have to spend time with family, or do the things I do, or make somebody happy, or whatever it might be. You know, I embrace every day with great enthusiasm, like I did from '07, you know, the last 8 years I raced, or whatever it was, after I put those points behind me in '06, you know, I was a different guy at the racetrack. Everybody could tell it. And I'm that same guy now. I just don't drive race cars.
Let's go ahead and close it off.
Jerry Jordan, Kicking the Tires and Performance Racing Network. Kenny kind of got a little bit of my question there, but when you left, you pretty much didn't come back to the track. Have you enjoyed this past year being with this process of coming into the Hall of Fame? And
Yes. You know, I know, you know, when I tell you this, people are going to say that's not right. But it doesn't matter what's right or what's not. I don't feel like I have a place. I didn't feel like there was any place for me. What was I supposed to do? Go to the racetrack and stand in the middle of the garage area with no, you know, and I feel like now if I go to the racetrack, I kind of have a place. I still don't really have a place to go, but I can go in anybody's trailer and hang out. But I felt like I had no business at the racetrack anymore, you know. So I was a fan, what I was to start with. So yeah, this makes me feel like, you know, I have a place, a little bit of a place. But the thing about racing is when you step out, the hole closes behind you so fast, it's unbelievable. As a driver, as a crew chief, crew member or whatever, I'm sure even doing your job, you step out for very long, that hole closes, man, it ain't easy to get back inside. And, you know, I stepped out and the hole's closed, and I just, I embrace this opportunity to represent the NASCAR Hall of Fame because it makes me very proud that we have this, because of how important it is to me to know the full story about Raymond Parks. I knew who he was and whatnot, but I know the full story now. So for a guy who's been here for so long to learn that through this process, just think what it's going to do 50 years from now, how important it's going to be. It's the only way that our grandkids are going to have any idea where this sport came from. So it's an honor for me to help promote that to our fans today, you know, how important it is to our fans.
Very well put, Mark. And before we let you go, a couple more honors headed your way. Recently, United States Representative Richard Hudson of North Carolina's 8th Congressional District made remarks honoring each of the inductees from the 2017 class. Those remarks were recorded in the Congressional Record, the official record of all congressional proceedings, and copies of those remarks are framed, and we have them here for you tonight. Also, Rick Elenbaugh, the mayor of Batesville, Arkansas, is proclaimed today Mark Martin Day in your hometown. So pretty cool honors, and we have a couple of plaques to have you take home with you, and we'll get a photos with you before you head out. Congratulations, awesome job on your speech.
Thank you.
Quite an honor in the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Thank you, guys. And just before I go, that means a lot to have Mark Martin Day in Batesville. I know most of you probably know that's home base for me now, and I'm very, very proud to be Arkansan and to have brought all the stuff, all the hardware that I gathered up through the 40 years of racing back home. So, thank you.
Congratulations. No problem. We'll get a couple pictures here with these Mark real quick.
All right, you and I?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
We'll do it right here.
Yes, sir.
Good? All right. Here you go, Mike. One more here. Yep, I'm sorry. On back. Yeah, poor Mark Martin Day. I think you only have about 20 more minutes. You good? All right, congratulations, Mark. Have a good one, pal.